When we think of conflict, we often think of it as a two-sided contest, sort of a headbutting of two opposed individuals or teams or nations or political positions. And in the moment, it appears that there's going to be a winner in that contest, that conflict, that headbutting, and there's going to be a loser. But to Martin Luther King, that did not seem like an adequate way to think about conflict. In many of his writings, sermons, essays, books, you find him using these terms, thesis, antithesis, analysis, and synthesis, and conceiving of conflict as something that has a dynamic that progresses through time. Dr. King attributes those terms to the philosopher George Hegel, but scholars who study Hegel point out that he didn't really use those terms and that they actually interfere with understanding what Hegel really said. I'm not a Hegel scholar, so I'm not familiar with the details of those arguments. But I am interested in the use that Dr. King made of those terms and in the insight that he seemed to derive from it. So I'd like to talk about conflict evolving over time in this video. And I'm giving my interpretation of what Dr. King derived from who he thought was Hegel, but whose source might be somebody else. So let me share my screen. This is always an adventure, as some of you know. Okay, I think that's what I want. Here's a little diagram that suggests the two-sided headbutting contest. And two of these terms, thesis and antithesis, are used as labels for one team and the other team, or one individual who's saying yes and another person who's saying no. We'll call this view of conflict the adversarial view. But the adversarial view of conflict is going to be sort of like a still shot taken out of a movie. And when we put the time dimension into our understanding of conflict, we'll get something more like this Hegelian view, which may be a misnomer. But in the adversarial view, before we leave it, I'll just pull out a couple of ideas that come from Gandhi and from Hegel. Gandhi said that both sides in a conflict bear some responsibility for it. So the conflict itself may ultimately be a really bad thing, or it may actually be generative. There's a level of conflict that's normal that actually turns out to have important value for us. But Gandhi's position, his basic assumption about conflicts between people and between groups, was that both sides probably have some responsibility for it. And further, both sides in a conflict may own part of the truth. And that's something that I think Hegel did say. Hegel held that truth comes out of error, and that there is a kind of time dimension to how we arrive at the truth, which he was very interested in. I think I'm correct in saying that Hegel was one of those philosophers of the 19th century who put the time dimension into the understanding of events and the understanding of people. We have people like Darwin who thought in terms of really long stretches of time to accommodate his ideas of evolution. We think of Freud, who explained some of the problems that adults have by tracing them back to childhood. And then we have Hegel, who wants to understand how we arrive at truth, how thinking evolves, how perhaps as our thinking proceeds, it is self-correcting. And these philosophers are really doing something a little bit new, in my understanding, in Western philosophy. They're putting time into our understanding of how things work. So let's go to a little more complicated diagram. Here's we'll call this the Hegelian view of conflict, because that's what a lot of nonviolence training programs do. They do attribute these terms, thesis, antithesis, and so on, to Hegel. And Dr. King did so in his writings, possibly incorrectly, but that was his way of presenting them. So we'll call this expanded view, with time flowing downward on the screen into our discussion. Here's the adversarial conflict. It's still this box with the two head-butting sides to it. But as Gandhi suggested, each of these sides may have some truth. They may be defending and representing some truth. And we can analyze a conflict, perhaps if we are a third person, a mediator, or perhaps if we are one of the contestants in the conflict. We might be able to arrive at a combination of the truths of the two sides. That's a way of getting a first draft, at least, of a synthesis. And I think something like this is attempted often when people in business or diplomacy are trying to arrive at a position that can be accepted by everybody, by all the stakeholders in a conflict. Now, the synthesis, once it is created, if it remains stable, that might be a new thesis, and it might be opposed to a new antithesis by people who disagree with it. That's how the derivation of new truths might go on and on and on. But anyway, this putting of time into the understanding of conflict is an important contribution to our understanding of how conflict works. And I think it really deeply impressed Dr. King. He used this model, in fact, to define nonviolence as he understood it. In his application of these terms, the reasoning goes something like this. Very often in everyday life, we face a choice between just doing nothing and staying out of trouble, so we think, or responding violently to a threat. If someone offends us, we may have to make a decision about whether to respond, and so on. So the thesis is to do nothing. The antithesis is to respond violently. What truths are contained, or what parts of value are contained within those two sides? Well, Dr. King would say, if you do nothing, at least you're doing no harm, hopefully. If you're just staying out of the way, you are not committing violence against other people. But if you're violent, at least you're active. And Dr. King valued being active. When those are combined, we get a synthesis in which, whoops, in which we combine those two truths, or those two values. Nonviolence is an active response, and one that does no harm, that does not commit violence against others. So in a number of places, Dr. King uses this framework to explain why nonviolence is not just doing nothing. It is an active response, but one that aims to do no harm. Dr. King also seems to have appreciated at least one implication for leadership that comes out of this model. And it's simply this, that because conflict evolves over time, leaders have an opportunity to shape the direction of that change. There may be truths that the leader wants to emphasize, for example. But by having time in our understanding, he saw that as creating opportunities for leadership. So let's see, I want to stop sharing. So that's a little rundown on our understanding of conflict that goes beyond the simple head-butting view of conflict that we often are presented with. For example, in sports, as I've noted elsewhere, we have an artificial conflict between two sides that is adversarial, but it's adversarial by design. And so I've noted that sports like football and baseball and so on are not really a very good model for conflict in general. They don't give you the idea that the two teams that are playing against each other might make a decision at some point to start playing a different sport, or to merge and begin to get into some other kind of business. That doesn't happen within the rules of football or baseball, but it happens all the time in business. And families often form and dissolve in that kind of way. That means that now they're playing a different game. Nonviolence often transforms conflicts in a creative way, creates new situations. Some of the stories that I've told about nonviolence on this channel sort of have that character. Instead of continuing to play the game and taking your turn to make another move in the game, another act of retaliation, for example, we decide to do something different. And so thinking about nonviolence within the context of conflict, I think it creates a lot of interesting complexities. And for the most part, encouraging, because they suggest new opportunities for people to relate to each other and to do something other than try to destroy each other. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and I hope you will support this channel and give this video a like, and I'll see you next time.